Have you ever felt that leadership is a dynamic and ever evolving journey? We certainly have. And that's why we're excited to extend a personal invitation for you to be with us today as we embark on leadership renaissance. We're really looking forward to helping you to change the way you actually lead, to transform your leadership style, not just for yourself, but also for your organization and the people that you lead. And that's why today we're doing something really, really special. We come to you each week on Thursdays around this time, 12:15, to really talk to you about how you can actually enhance your leadership journey. It's all about maximizing potential, performance, and profitability. That's what we do here on this particular platform. See, our goal is to help you do two things. Number one, we want you to develop the leaders you need. And number two, we want you to create the company that you actually love, that people actually love working at rather. Today, we have three questions that have come forward in our weekly live Q&A open office hour session. We're going to be talking about employee experience and engagement, productivity. We're going to talk about leadership, of course, that's why we're here. And so we're going to talk about developing that leadership pipeline within your organization. How do you actually ensure that your organization is positioned for long-term success? And then we have a third question for you, and that's just about the strategies to create a positive and inclusive organizational culture that promotes diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're going to get right into it. I'm your host, Dr. Sherilyn Payne. First question. So how can we develop a leadership pipeline within our organization to ensure long-term success? Well, there are a number of ways of which you can actually do that. And one of those is really thinking about your leadership pipeline. Who do you actually have in the seats to fill, or in the pipeline, I would say, to fill an open seat? If you had a key leader or someone who was in a key role and they left today, what would the impact be on your organization? So this is a really important question. And one of the things that, if you know anything about me, you know that I have a relationship with God. Now, I don't impose that on anyone else, but it is something that's very important to me. And there is a scripture or a saying that we use sometimes in the spiritual world, and that's about having a ram in the bush, right? So with the term, God always has someone else that he can actually use. And I love that, especially when we're talking about leadership, because I want to ask you, who are the rams that you have in the bush? See, if somebody refuses to do what they're supposed to do, they don't do it, they don't like being in your organization, it's time for them to move on, time for them to actually grow, then what happens? I'll never forget when I was much younger, we had this leader. And what was interesting was that actually was a church leader, and that he was very, very prominent. People loved him. They loved him. And what we saw was that they never wanted to leave. They always wanted to be around him and stay in that same position, never deciding that, you know what, I am going to go somewhere else. And so they just wanted to sit. And so I'll never forget when he sent them out. And he sent them out to lead other churches, start other churches. And they were so upset. And it was interesting that they were so upset, because that's what you're supposed to do, is to go out, and he's supposed to send you out. But what we saw happen is that they didn't want that. They thought that, he's kicking them out, because he never really, I would assume, talked to them about the importance of succession planning and growing and developing other leaders, of having someone in the pipeline. So as opportunities come available and other leaders are promoted, or we have to send them to a different location or whatever, or maybe they're over a different function, who can fill their spot? Who will be in the organization, that we don't have to look elsewhere. We don't have to go outside this institution. We don't have to go outside this company, this organization, this governmental body to find the next person that we actually need. They're right here. They're all around you if you actually look, if you actually listen, if you actually grow them, you develop them, and you position them. And so when you're asking the question of how do you develop a leadership pipeline within your organization to ensure long-term success, well, I'm going to be honest, that takes you nurturing your talent, building relationships with them, growing them. What are their gaps? What are their opportunities? What are their strengths? What does it actually take to be successful in that particular role? Now, one of the things you may say is you may have a list and you say, we have this person or this particular role, and here are the people who can potentially fill this role. Here are their gaps, here are their strengths, here are their opportunities. Here's what the role actually requires. And you may have a number of people. It may not just be one person who you've identified as a successor, because remember, we're talking about the pipeline. So if we're talking about the pipeline, what's in the pipeline? What roles feed into that particular role? What positions feed into that? How can they get the key skills and the key, the information or the insights, the knowledge, the relationships that are needed for them to succeed in that particular role? So, one of the things I've always loved is developing leadership development programs for executives. That's been my jam. It's been my thing. It's what I love, what I do really, really well. But one of the things that moved me in such a way that I did not expect for it to have an impact on my life as well as the organization was creating an early career program with people who had recently graduated from college. So they had recently graduated, meaning they graduated, I believe it was that semester before that. So they actually just graduated and joined the organization. So it wasn't that they had a year or 2 years of career experience. No, they just graduated. They fed into this particular program that I created. And we identified the skills and the leaders and, all of the things that would be necessary for them to grow their career within the organization, right? We talk to them up front about our expectations. Hey, you're going to live here. You're going to do this rotation. You're going to go over here. You're going to move here. And so are you game for it? Are you up for it? What we saw with that particular early career, so it wasn't just, it was let me change that. It was a university leaders program, to be clear, university leaders program. What we found, those particular people who we hired, those recent college graduates, were able to solve some long-term problems within our organization. It gave us the pipeline that we needed. We identified them early on, right? Do you want to be in this program? We created a program for them. We had regular feedback, regular coaching sessions for them, opportunities for them to showcase what they had actually learned, what they were working on, what problems were they actually solving. And we gave the opportunities for them to engage in cross-functional experiences, to become readers, to become leaders, to showcase their leadership skills. We just really ensure that we had the tools and the resources and the support in the program that really allowed us to have a strong talent pipeline, leadership pipeline for our key roles and positions. So how do you do that? You got to identify your high potentials. Maybe your organization doesn't have an appetite for that. Well, that was something this particular organization needed. So start by identifying your high potential individuals. Notice I said high potential, not high performance. Because so often we get caught up in high performance and not high potential. High potential is just that who has the potential to be successful. Not that they have a lot of output right now, because just because you're high performance could mean that you get a lot of stuff done, but how do you get it done? High potential is a little bit different. So who are your hypos? And then give them the mentorship and the coaching that they need, the feedback that's necessary, which means you're going to have to be pretty explicit and clear. Now, there are two schools of thought. Some people say, yes, we tell them that they're high potential. Yes, we tell them they're in the pipeline. Others say, no, we don't. And I won't get into all of the nuances of why you would or why you wouldn't right now. But what's important is to understand that for you to have a leadership pipeline to ensure long-term success, you got to have something to pull from. You got to start somewhere. And so I'm just giving you somewhere where you could start. Now, where does it make the most sense within your organization? What are the roles that's going to be critical that you have that pipeline? Hard for people to come in and to really be successful in that particular function within your organization. Every company has it, right? So maybe, let's see, I'm trying to think of a recent organization that I've supported, and their organization where it may be a little bit tougher to assimilate and acclimate into that particular program, into that particular function, rather. I can't think of anything, but we'll just say it's your commercial sales division. Maybe commercial sales, your products are so complicated. Maybe your clients are very high demanding that it's a challenge for you to do that. So that's something that I would say, get in there and begin to partner with the leaders within your organization to really understand that forward-thinking leaders recognize that the importance of cultivating a pipeline is really critical for your sustained success, especially right now as we are in a dynamic business environment. Things are changing and they're moving. I got a statistic for you. Statistics show that organizations with strong leadership pipelines are 2.4 times more likely to outperform their peers in terms of profitability and growth. And so just that statistic alone, it shows you that it is key. 2.4 times more likely to outperform your peers in terms of profitability and growth. Wow. Wow, that's a game changer. So if you hear something like that, I want you to think about, who are your peers? Do they have a strong pipeline? Is that the reason why they may be outperforming you? If they are, and if they're not, could they develop this? And could this be the game changer for them, shifting them to begin to outperform you? Could you do it and outperform them and continue to lead the market? So as you can see, it is a necessity. It's not something that's really an option. If you want to lead the market and be the number one or number two in your market and then sustain that particular position, it is something that you absolutely must recognize. It is essential to your success. So we're going to move on to question number two. Question number two is, what strategies can we implement to create a positive and inclusive organizational culture that promotes diversity and inclusion? What strategies can you use? Well, there are a number that I absolutely love. But one that especially is particularly important to me right now is to understand why you must do it, why it's an imperative, it's a key, it's a no-brainer. You see, when you have a diverse team, did you know that diverse teams are 87% better at decision making? That takes the pressure off of one person. 87%. Imagine if you had $1, you got 87% for every 87% on every dollar that you had. Wow, you're almost doubling your money, right? So it's better. So I want you to think about that. Research indicates that diverse teams are 87% better at decision making. So that means no matter what the decisions you're making right now, if you made them in isolation or you made them with a team that all looks alike, sounds alike, talks alike, walks alike, decision could have been better. This is important to me because just this past week, I needed to make a decision. And the decision that I made was life-changing for me. Now, what did I do? I had a diverse group of people who I ran the decision by. And I asked them for their input. People who were completely different than me, in completely different regions of the country, different age groups than me, different faiths than me, people with different backgrounds than me, who grew just completely different culturally speaking, different as far as their profession. So I asked this question, and guess what? I got a number of different responses, which is what happens. But what happened is I was able to take all of those perspectives together and use them as I talk to the different individuals and share, hey, this is what this person said, and this is what this person said, and this is what I came up with, so that I could arrive at the best decision. And I felt so much better. When I made that decision, I was in complete peace. Now, why do I share that story with you? If you're like me, you don't like wasting time, you don't like wasting money. And so you want to ensure that your life is set up to be the best that it possibly can be. You see, I give certain individuals permission to speak into my life. Whereas I have other people who say, I don't give anybody permission to speak into my life. I make my own decisions. And that's great to be an independent thinker. But when you can make decisions with a diverse group, get their ideas, get their input, use that to evaluate your decisions, use that to strengthen and enhance the way you think, man, you're onto something. What I see is that so many people want to make decisions in isolation. Nobody has an input, no one has a say. I see others who involve way too many people. And so you can never narrow it down. You can never get it to the point where you're able to say, you know what? Okay, I can evaluate all of these responses and then make the ultimate decision of what's best. Then you have other people who say, you know what? I'm going to look at my decisions just with this one person and just that one person alone. when you have a positive and inclusive culture that promotes DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's proven to be, you're proven to have more innovation and greater productivity. Is that not what you want? Innovation and creativity leads to more money, leads to better results, better outcomes. You being more productive, you're not wasting time, you're not wasting energy. So if you want a diverse and inclusive culture and you want to promote that within your organization, I want you to start by not focusing on who looks different. I want you to focus on how people actually think, who thinks differently, who's the outlier, who has a different perspective, who's really good at connecting the dots and getting the right thinkers into the room. Start there. Start there. And it's just not about function, because I've seen some people who are highly political, and they will collect different people and put them in the room. But it's groupthink. The group is thinking the same way. You use unity and collaboration as a method to not take ownership. And you get the people in the right room, and you guys have had the meeting before the meeting, and you come in and you're completely on the same page. And anybody who says anything differently, anybody who opposes, they are against you instead of for you. It's crazy to me. Instead of you recognizing that, maybe this person is helping us to avoid something. Maybe this person is helping us to be great. Maybe this person has a different experience, or different companies, different perspective, whatever that is necessary. They're here to help, not to hurt. And if we look at it that they're here to help us and not to hurt us, then we're more open. But my say fear, it's not really a true fear like that. My fear is that we get people in the room and we're so busy wondering and working towards our office politics and who's not on board. We focus on who's not on board when they challenge us, when they don't go along with us. That's peer pressure, man. We should be at this part of the game, especially as high-level leaders. You should be so far from bullying. You should be so far from peer pressure. You should be so far from being intimidated by someone who thinks differently than you, and use that as a welcome mat for them to challenge you, provoke your thinking, stimulate your thinking. So I want you to develop inclusive policies and practices, especially when you have meetings. Set it up every meeting. I want to hear what you have to say. And then how you respond determines if you get more. See, when you don't encourage open communication, you don't celebrate differences and achievements, you don't do that, then what happens is that people say, you know what, my voice doesn't really matter. They don't really want to hear me. They just want somebody to agree with what they're saying. So why even try? Why even offer? Why even give them that? And so you're missing out. You're hurting yourself. So I want you to address the biases. I want you to create a dynamic and resilient workforce by being an open-minded leader. Not just having the open door, but open-minded, and you don't retaliate. You don't bully, you don't gossip, you don't get somebody in the room. Girl, did you hear what they said? Or did you hear what Jim just said? I can't believe Jim thought like that. Stop it. Knock it off. I want you to rise up and become better and stronger and understand that open-minded leaders, they understand that diverse teams are the way to go. It's important for greater employee satisfaction. It's important for decision making. It's important to have a healthy organizational culture, not just positive within some teams, not just inclusive within some teams, but for your organization to be all out healthy. That is an essential. That's an essential. And so if you're not already, I'm going to encourage you to begin to look at bias. What are your biases? Are you biased towards people who look like you? Are you biased towards people who look a certain way? Are you biased towards people who think a certain way? Are you biased towards people who come from this organization? Anytime bias is in there and you can see the bias, then you already know that we're not as open as we could be. Remove the bias. And so if you want to, you can take the unconscious bias course, and I promote that course. But I also want you to think about beyond the unconscious bias course, because you can't do it just one time. and think that, we've arrived. You got to call it out when you see it. Man, looks like we're being a little biased here. You got to challenge it. See, it can be the person who's always getting shut down as the person who says, hey, I'm getting shut down. Somebody else needs to call it out and identify it and say it. Is there a reason why every time Sue speaks, we kind of shut her down? Is there a reason why we're not really open to this person's opinion, even though we're saying that we are? Is there a reason why? Or have you noticed that? Have the uncomfortable conversations and allow people to have them without you tending to steer people towards a certain belief or thought system about someone. Rise greater, rise higher. Third question, how can we enhance the employee experience to boost engagement and productivity and reduce turnover? Well, here's what research says. Research says that companies with engaged employees outperform, I love those numbers, their competition by 147%. I'm going to say that one more time. Research suggests that companies with engaged employees outperform their competition by 147%. That's a lot. That means that you can't afford to have employees who are not engaged. Now, I'm going to give you another tip. Engagement is not simply doing the job, right? It's giving your discretionary effort to do the job and to do the job well. See, people come to work and they may be doing the job, but are they fully connected with your organization? And then there are people who you think are engaged because they're the ones in the meetings and they say things like, and to Bob's point, and you think they're engaged because they are regurgitating what they heard somebody else say. And then you have the other individuals, you say, you know what, they're not engaged because they didn't speak. Perhaps, again, going back to the previous question that someone asked, maybe they're just a little bit different and quiet. Do we have respect that, maybe they're an introvert, maybe they're naturally quiet, maybe they don't speak up as much, but you can get their ideas in another way. So I want you to think about that. But I want you to think that engagement is not a one-size-fits-all solution. You got to create a work environment where people feel valued. They feel appreciated. They feel seen. They feel heard. They feel motivated. I feel like I'm singing a rap song. So that's what you got to do first. Now, some people will say, well, it leads back to your rewards and recognition program. And I'm going to challenge you on that. I think that's a key. But I want you to recognize that everyone everyone values recognition and rewards differently. For some people, it's about money. For some people, others, it could be about freedom. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, right? So what's important for that particular employee? Maybe for somebody, it's the work-life balance. You could be overworking your high performers. One of the things, of course, that we see is that you burn out employees when you're giving the high performers, especially, more work. What's the reward for doing a great job? Here you go. Here's some more work for you. And then you don't do anything about the people who are slacking at the organization. That decreases your engagement and your connection with the organization. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about offering professional development opportunities. I worked at one organization and they were giving each person like $5,000 each for professional development alone. But then other people in the organization who were on similar teams received nothing for their professional development. So how do you bridge the gap with that? Maybe one is extreme, the other is not enough. Professional development can come in so many different ways, but it's not just here's an Excel class for you to take. That's not necessarily what we would consider professional development. So I want you to encourage the feedback. Act on the feedback of what people are saying as it relates to rewards and recognition, as it relates to wellness, as it relates to work-life balance, as it relates to do they feel seen, valued, heard, and appreciated? Do they feel like they have a voice? Do they feel like they can speak up? Those are some things that you can actually look at and review to determine whether your organization is really creating an employee experience that boosts engagement and productivity and reduces turnover. One of the other things I would say is, again, I've talked about it so oftentimes, I truly believe that culture and leadership are your competitive advantage. I believe that with all of my heart. And that's why you will always hear me say, develop the leaders you need and create the company that talent loves. It's not just about the perks. It's not just about you spending money. It's not just about you doing something. Some organizations never do anything fun. I've worked in banking, a financial institution, a couple of financial institutions. You can have fun at work, and it is okay to have fun at work, to create a fun environment, even when things are serious, even when it's important. How can we infuse fun and life in this organization so your organization is not sucking the life or draining the life out of your employees? It is going to be challenging to boost engagement when you have a toxic work culture. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. When your employees can't trust you, they can't trust your leaders, they can't trust your organization, they can't trust you to follow through. They don't believe in your sustainability. They don't believe in the products that you actually sell. They don't believe that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. How can you have trust and reduce turnover? When you are bringing people in from the outside, paying them more, promoting them, people get upset. They get really upset. So I want you to think about that. What can you do? See, I can give you a long list of things that actually work for some organizations and what I've seen work or are more likely to work. But also, what do you have the money for? What do you have the appetite for? What do your employees have the appetite for? What do they want versus what you want? That's the key. What do they want versus what you want for them? And so often what I've seen is leaders get so sucked in to, or especially HR, as to this is what we think. This is what the market is saying. These are the trends. May work, may not. Maybe simple empowerment is the key at your organization. Maybe it's not the culture. I don't like what you do, so I go over your head. The tattletale, run tell mommy culture. I'm just going to say it. Those are some things that forward-thinking leaders and organizations understand are absolutely essential to boosting employee engagement and productivity and ensuring your long-term success. So those are the 3 questions I have for you. Again, if you want your question answered, all you got to do is send me a message, leadership@smpistrategies.com. You can leave your messages also. You can within the comment section, or you can DM me and send me your questions. I will be more than happy to help you get your questions answered as you continue to transform your organization. Thank you for your time and your work, the work that you actually do. We look forward to having you join us for the next week's episode of Leadership Renaissance. It's going to be an event that inspires us. It's going to be an event that moves us forward. And I really appreciate you making the determination and the decision that you're going to be at the forefront of leadership transformation. I love you guys, and I'll see you back here next week.